Officer at WHO's Regional Office for Africa. Well, the World Health Organization has confirmed an AP report of dozens of new coronavirus cases at its Geneva headquarters. The revelation comes amid a surge of cases in Europe.
We are, as you know, as all workplaces, we are following infections, and we're monitoring the health of all of our staff all over the world. We have had cases that have been staff members, and yes, I did also see the AP story. There have been 65 cases associated with HQ staff, headquarters staff, not all of which have been on the premises. There have been 36. Those 65 are from the start of the pandemic.
The WHO says it's investigating how and where its staff got infected, but has not yet determined whether transmission happened at its offices. More than 2,000 people usually work at the Geneva headquarters, where it says it has strict prevention measures in place. The WHO is coordinating the global response to the pandemic. Well, now with the latest on the situation in Ethiopia, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed says his government is ready to receive and reintegrate refugees from the Tigray region. Residents have been fleeing fighting between the military and the Tigray People's Liberation Front. The Ethiopian government has ruled out negotiations with leadership in Tigray until it deems the rule of law has been respected. The African Union and a number of African leaders have offered to mediate the conflict. A federal government spokesperson in a statement said Ethiopia would not allow a province to have its own military weapons and use them against the national army.
We don't need any mediation until we bring the leaders to court, because any mediation would incentivize impunity and unruliness. So any partner who wishes the holding together of Ethiopia, and then the government has to be supported to make sure that the law of the land is upheld. To equate the government with any subnational entity who threatens the very existence of the country would actually elevate such impunity, and if impunity reigns in Ethiopia, then Ethiopia wouldn't exist. So any country should put itself, any partner should put itself in our shoe.
Meanwhile, the UN Refugee Agency says more than 25,000 people have fled for neighboring Sudan. Refugees arriving at the border have been describing how they escaped fierce fighting.
We worked for so many years, we left everything and fled. We came with just the clothes on our backs.
I don't know what was happening, but there was heavy fighting and many people died. After that, they told us to leave, so we fled. Everyone did.
Around 5,000 refugees arrived at Sudan's border provinces on Sunday alone, the highest single-day influx since the start of the conflict. Well, let's now take a short break and return. More news making headlines, including we'll look at Somalia's efforts to ensure more deaf children get formal learning opportunities.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just
hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
You're watching news making headlines right here on Africa Live. Well, Joe Biden has been hosting a joint video conference of labor union leaders and chief executives of major companies. But the projected winner of the U.S. presidency has yet to formally start his transition to the White House, with President Donald Trump still refusing to concede the election. CGTN's Owen Fairclough has more.
Joe Biden is beginning to get down to the business of transitioning into the presidency and setting out his plans for the US economy. He met via video conference at this theatre behind me in Wilmington, Delaware, to talk with the heads of companies like General Motors, Gap, Target and Microsoft to set out a joint vision for how the US might emerge from this COVID-19 pandemic. But Biden held that conference just hours after China signed a giant free trade deal with the likes of Japan, Australia, and around 15 countries to form a huge free trade bloc in the Asia Pacific. A reminder that after 4 years where President Donald Trump either revised or turned his back on multilateral trade deals and institutions, Biden is under some pressure to re-engage America. And yet Biden said he wasn't quite ready to join China in that kind of trade deal just yet. Let's hear from Joe Biden.
We make up 25% of the world's trading capacity, of the economy of the world. We need to be aligned with the other democracies.
But of course, all of these plans for the economy are contingent on the US getting on top of the COVID-19 pandemic and putting it behind. News that another pharmaceutical company, Moderna, has a vaccine that might be ready to be rolled out within weeks, has been tempered somewhat, with the Biden campaign complaining that President Trump's refusal to concede the election is starting to have real consequences. Biden can't begin the formal transition until Trump has conceded the election, and his campaign team, his transition team, are saying that they're being prevented from talking to heads of departments and crucial government departments to ensure a smooth transition that includes how to deal with the coronavirus pandemic. And Biden said this will have real consequences.
More people may die if we don't coordinate. Look, as my chief of staff, Ron Klain, would say, who handled Ebola, the vaccine is important. It's of little use until you're vaccinated.
But having used the words in a tweet, he won, describing Joe Biden, Donald Trump is now doubling down again and refusing to concede that election, insisting he won, despite the fact that his own lawyers are now abandoning lawsuits to challenge the results of the election in key swing states. So, a president who refuses to concede, US voters expect a smooth transition, but right now they're getting anything but that. Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Wilmington, Delaware.
Let's bring the focus back to the African continent, and it's day 2 for former South African President Jacob Zuma at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture in Johannesburg. The first day was spent debating whether Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo should recuse himself or not. Lawyers of the former president accused Zondo of being biased and said the judge should remove himself from the commission. Angela Coppola has that story.
Zondo called the proceedings to order and announced that he hadn't made a decision on the recusal application, and he planned to spend the entire day working through a large amount of documentation before making his announcement or his ruling. In his response, Mr. Zuma's lawyer announced that they would also be filing an affidavit in response to Mr. Zondo's statement on Monday. Zuma plans to dispute some of the detail in the DCJ's statement about their relationship. And then Moses Kikakane, Zuma's lawyer, requested that the judge give Mr. Zuma time off to travel to attend a funeral that had just been announced. This means that Mr. Zuma will not be in court on Wednesday to hear that recusal decision or the affidavit concerning the disputes about the relationship between himself and Justice Zondo. This matter is far from over, and Mr. Zuma will be back in the commission on Thursday. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Let's head over to the Horn of Africa, where Somali forces have increased military operations as African Union troops prepare to exit the country after helping to turn the tide against a military group, Al-Shabaab. From Mogadishu, CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo brings us the story.
Somali special forces patrol a coastal town in the Lower Shabelle region months after seizing it from militant group Al-Shabaab. In recent years, government forces have been conducting independent operations, capturing strategic towns and villages previously used by the terrorist group to attack allied forces and mount deadly car bombs in Mogadishu and surrounding towns. Elsewhere, a 20,000-strong peacekeeping force known as AMISOM that has been operating in the country since 2007 has been gradually handing over security responsibility to Somali forces after assisting Somali authorities to turn the tide against militant group Al-Shabaab that once controlled nearly half of the country. Hussein Sheikh Ali is a former national security advisor to the Somali president and says the transitional process has been slow and hasn't been implemented effectively.
There was an agreement in 2017, May 2017, a plan that was agreed between the Somali government and the international community to help the Somali security forces to take over from AMISOM. And that program was called a transition plan. And it was a conditional transitional plan. Since 2019, there was no AMISOM exit, and things remain the same.
The African Union force has handed over several forward operating bases to government forces. This military base on the outskirts of Mogadishu had been under the African Union mission for years and played a crucial role in ousting the Al-Qaeda-affiliated group from Mogadishu 8 years ago. Along the country's border with Kenya, units of the army have been deployed to boost security. Forces have been urged to increase pressure on the group ahead of planned polls next month.
I urge security forces to work closely with members of the public. We are heading towards general elections, and security is of paramount importance. Securing the country remains the main priority, and we must all play a role in ensuring that no one disrupts our stability.
On the political front, the new Prime Minister last month appointed a new Defense Minister, whose critical task will be implementing an existing transitional plan. Under that plan, AMISOM is expected to hand over military outposts to Somali forces and reduce its troops on the ground. Meanwhile, Mogadishu has been increasing its military personnel, with countries like Turkey training hundreds of troops at this military academy in the Somali capital, as Somali authorities prepare for gradual AMISOM exit from the country in the coming years. Abdulaziz Billo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Well, still in Somalia, the country's Hearing Impaired Association has seen an increase in the number of deaf students seeking learning opportunities. The association runs a number of schools across the country. However, there is still a significant number of hearing impaired children not enrolled in formal education. From Mogadishu, CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo brings us that report.
This school was the first in Mogadishu to cater to children with deafness or hearing loss. It is now one of several branches run by the Somali National Association of the Deaf.
Before the school was opened, my family kept me at home. I'm glad to be in school just like any other normal child my age.
I've been learning here for almost 4 years now. I have perfected sign language. My mother has also learned sign language. This has allowed me to communicate freely with my family.
Inside the school, children interact with each other with ease, but continue to face challenges outside. The school encourages parents to learn sign language to better understand their children.
This school was started in 2017 with 11 students. Today we have 150 students in this school. We have other branches in other districts of the capital, including Yakshid and Wadajir. The whole number of students in our schools now stands at 300. They are taught in Arabic and English, as well as sign language.
One of the school's biggest challenges is pushing for government recognition. It is not yet an educational institution where national examinations can take place. Pioneers at these centers say they will continue to pressure authorities until they receive their rights. Meanwhile, students at these schools say they are now ready to challenge their non-disabled peers academically. Abdullah Hassan heads an independent organization that lobbies for the rights of people living with disability. He explains why members of the deaf community struggle to receive support.
Society doesn't regard deafness as a disability. That's why you'll find people assisting a physically challenged person more than a deaf person. Therefore, out of all cases of disability in the country, we have realized that deaf people face more difficulties.
Currently, the government has no data on the number of deaf people in the country. Meanwhile, the Deaf Association is celebrating the progress made by this school, and the children in it who would have otherwise missed out on the opportunity to receive an education. Abdul Aziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Women in South Sudan continue to face challenges, including sexual harassment and a lack of job opportunities. Many say they're discriminated against because of their gender. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports.
Rebecca Kiden is a university graduate. She volunteers at an aviation company after failing to secure a job.
You go into an interview or you walk into an interview and there are guys and they see you're a lady, and some of them are open-minded. You know, they tell you, well, you don't have to do the interview. You know, you can meet me at this place. Yeah, especially for us ladies like me, I've experienced it like 3 times. They tell you, we can just meet up in this place, or you can come and meet me in my hotel, or this or that, and then you can start the job thereafter.
Many women in South Sudan tell similar stories. One youth organization is urging South Sudan's government to expedite programs to empower women that were stipulated in the country's 2018 peace deal. The agreement dictates that South Sudan's government provides funds for capacity building and financing for selected enterprises run by women, but the peace deal's implementation is delayed.
In this regard, we, the South Sudan Youth Organization Coalition, call upon the revitalized transitional government of national unity to establish the Women Enterprise Development Fund and further urge the transitional government to involve, engage, and consult with women throughout the process.
The organization says this will improve the entire economy in the long run. South Sudan has the 7th highest prevalence rate of child marriage in the world. 52% of girls are married before their 18th birthday, and 9% are married before they are 15 years old, according to UNICEF. UNICEF says child marriage is driven by gender inequality and the belief that girls are somehow inferior to boys.
95% of the clients that have walked in here, the first question they ask me, did you do aviation? Like, did you do anything with aviation? Did you do hospitality? Like, have you studied this field? And I'm like, no. In the university, I majored in finance. And then this is something that I got, and I decided to learn. I have a feeling a woman can do anything. It's not like a man this, a man should be doing that.
Rebecca Kiden says she believes South Sudan lacks a strong legal framework and says existing laws meant to protect women are poorly enforced. She says unless the situation changes, many women will continue to suffer. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
With Kenya's surging COVID-19 numbers, there are concerns that prison facilities may once again become transmission hotspots. The government has reimposed strict measures to curb the spread of the virus. CGTN's Enoch Sikolia takes a look at the short and long-term measures taken to decongest prisons.
A prison in the Kenyan town of Athi River. These prisoners here are learning skills like carpentry as they serve their sentences. Vocational training is part of a rehabilitation program helping the government reduce prison populations. Many facilities have been holding inmates beyond their capacity. In most Kenyan prisons, dozens of inmates share one room. The close quarters heightens the risk of COVID-19 transmission. At the start of the pandemic, the government released 4,800 prisoners, prioritizing petty offenders.
The period of the corona pandemic, very many offenders have been released. Now, the only challenge that we had is that now moving with them during this, taking them back to the society became a little bit tricky because of maybe the protocols that you're supposed to observe.
Plans to decongest Kenyan prisons began in 2017. At the heart of the program is to help inmates reintegrate into society. Prisoners are often viewed as outcasts after they are released. Cyrus Njora is among the beneficiaries.
I was sentenced to serve 22 years, and therefore I was supposed to leave prison 2029.
Njora was jailed for being a member of a car theft syndicate and spent 10 years behind bars. While in prison, he learned the art of tailoring.
I saw somebody who has a potential to do great things, because if he could use that skills he was using to steal things, maybe to develop himself, that person can become somebody of great minds.
Njora is determined to live up to expectations. He's helping young girls from poor neighborhoods learn how to make clothes, and during this pandemic, masks.
Many who are in prison, they are there because of negligence. Somebody has finished the school and he has nothing to do. That's why they engage themselves with a group of peer pressure and they fight themselves behind bar. Now, for this one, I'm happy because I'm giving them hope for future.
Back at Athi River Prison, the chief inspector says all inmates are currently enrolled in the rehabilitation program. The next challenge is securing resources for the reintegration process, which works with the community to transition inmates back into society. Enoxikolia, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Let's take a short break and return. Let's take a look at what's happening in the world of business. Nigeria's inflation rate jumps to 14.2% in October.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's now take a look at what's happening in the world of business. Nigeria's inflation quickened for a 14th straight month in October. It's a result of rising food prices caused by border closures, dollar restrictions, and banditry directed at farmers. The jump in inflation exceeded the central bank's target range of 6% to 9%, and say the hard financial outlook would probably continue accelerating due to the end of fuel subsidies, currency weaknesses, and typical festive seasonal price hikes. Another contributing factor was a recent order by President Muhammadu Buhari that restricted dollar access for food and fertilizer imports. Consumer prices also rose by 14.2% from a year earlier, compared with 13.7% in September. Also in Nigeria, the government has approved a free trade business registration for small and medium-sized enterprises. The move is expected to help up to 250,000 business owners who cannot afford the fee of about $50 to formalize their businesses. As Kelechi Emekalam reports, the approval, which came with an allotted quota for individual states, is part of the government's post-COVID-19 survival intervention to support the sector.
In Nigeria's capital,
Asma'u Yusuf readies her special healthy smoothies and hopes to make some favorable sales today. She's been struggling to break even with this 2-year-old business. Prices of fruits have gone up and affected her profit. Asma'u's business has remained unregistered because her monthly gain of about $40 is too meager to pay the $50 business registration fee. And not formalizing her business means her sales would be limited to just friends and family. But she's set to take advantage of government's free business registration intervention for businesses like hers.
We're very happy because if the federal government, if they bring this, as they bring this one now, I will register my products, and then at least I will reach out to people will reach out to me.
About 250,000 small businesses would benefit from this government intervention. Small businesses constitute about 90% of Nigeria's business economy, and the sector drives 50% of employment. However, the cost of business operation here is higher compared to elsewhere in the world. Several factors such as poor infrastructure and recently the COVID-19 disruptions are responsible for this.
Because of the way the light issue is going, it's really affecting us. Like for 3 to 4 days now, there have not been lights. I think since Friday, it really affects us because we buying fuel every day from morning to night. It's not really easy. The cost is high.
It is one thing to register businesses, to have businesses registered. It is another thing to have them start off. It is another thing then for them to sustain. So this policy or this initiative by federal government is not the end in itself. It's a means to an end. The final narrative will be justified by how many businesses after registration are able to start off, how many businesses after registration are able to sustain business activities, how many of these businesses are able to contribute to the economy. For me, the initiative is good. It's a very good initiative. But then, will it be able, or will it alone be able to carry out or to contribute significantly to the dream or the aspiration that we want to see in terms of economic development?
Government may need to do more than free business registration to sustain actual economic growth. Many propose that authorities simplify access to capital loans for small businesses, strengthen infrastructure that would in turn create an enabling environment for businesses to thrive. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
In Uganda, stores are offering early Black Friday deals and price cuts online to try to stop crowds cramming into shops during the COVID-19 pandemic. Isabel Nakira reports from Kampala.
Online and retail stores in Uganda are rolling out Black Friday deals all this month. Instead of the traditional short-term price cuts around the 27th November. Even so, the shopping holiday is expected to be lower key than previous years due to the economic hardship brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic.
The deals we have up to 80% is a reflection of Jumia's commitment, of our partners and our vendors' commitment to giving back to our customers who have suffered quite a lot, both on the health side, the economic side, and also on a personal level as well.
Black Friday usually offers shoppers good deals for early Christmas shopping. With health concerns due to the pandemic, customers are avoiding stores and buying online. But fashion stores say they are finding it hard to get the right sizes, especially if they have to make online deliveries. And social distancing and closed changing rooms in physical stores means brands are having to get creative.
It's very tricky because sometimes you've not met this client before, but then if she sends you a picture, from the picture you can try to refine. You're like, okay, she might be a 14 or a 10 or an 8, like that.
Shoppers are also embracing online shopping as an easy and less risky way to get groceries.
It's very safe, first of all, because they deliver from a distance, so there's no contact even while they deliver. So that makes me feel comfortable. knowing at least I don't know where this person has been. I don't have to have contact with them, and also it's very convenient for me.
So even if there's no mad dash on Black Friday itself this year, store owners are hoping deals throughout November will help them stay in business. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
15 countries from across Asia Pacific have signed the world's largest trade deal. It comes after 8 years of negotiations pushed back by deadlines and the withdrawal of India. The Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, was signed on the final day of this year's ASEAN Summit. CGTN's Rian Malser reports.
This was not how the leaders would have imagined it when talks began 8 years ago. 15 ministers putting pen to paper back in their home countries, watching each other on checkerboard split screens. But they finally got it done, inking the free trade deal encompassing the 10 ASEAN countries, China, Japan, South Korea, Australia and New Zealand, comprising 30% of the world's population and nearly 30% of its GDP.
It will send a strong message that affirms ASEAN's leading role in supporting the multilateral trading system, creating a new trading structure in the region, enabling sustainable trade facilitation, revitalizing the supply chains disrupted by COVID-19, and assisting post-pandemic recovery.
Mutually beneficial cooperation in East Asia will help boost global development and economic growth, and our cooperation is indispensable in such a process. We are also committed to the path of solidarity and development.
The deal should remove tariff and many non-tariff barriers and boost investment, e-commerce and cooperation in areas such as technology. RCEP will make these countries more interdependent, and that increasing economic closeness will be an incentive to avoid inflaming geopolitical tensions and disputes. And there are a few of those. Between 4 of the ASEAN countries and China over the South China Sea, between the East Asian countries, and more recently, between Australia and China.
I welcome the fact that Australia and China have been able to continue as partners in the RCEP agreement. It's an important sign of our willingness to continue to work in regional cooperation and regional economic partnership.
RCEP won't actually come into effect until next year, but it will still be a timely and vital boost to a region and world struggling to emerge from the economic damage wreaked by the pandemic. Ryan Meltzer, CGTN, Kuala Lumpur.
Let's head to Sudan, where the acting energy minister says the country will offer 27 oil concession blocks through a global bid. 3 are offshore blocks and the rest are land blocks. The Ministry of Energy and Mining has urged investors to use modern technologies in order to match oil production with exploration data. Sudan is promoting these blocks to attract investors with specific technology to meet the requirements of each block. The ministry is also calling on prospective investors to provide social services such as water, education, and health projects, among other benefits. Well, let's now take a short break. Return with more news.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, with plenty of time on their hands, the COVID-19 pandemic inspired thousands of Egyptian kids looking for a new hobby under strict pandemic measures. Many turned to making and flying kites. Traditional Egyptian kites are hexagonal with long, sparkly tails. The return of the pastime this year sees the kites infused with modern art.
In Cairo's El Emireya district, on the rooftop of its small buildings, Hossein Mohammed puts the final touches to his newest creation. With most concerts and art shows cancelled this year, the 30-year-old musician and artist shifted his talent to highlight the beauty of Egypt's traditional kites. Months of partial and full COVID-19 lockdown have revived this stunning hobby.
The lockdown has really changed our perspective. Our days were all alike. There was nothing to entertain us. We needed something. Kites were our answer.
Most of these young men weren't old enough to learn about making kites when the hobby was still popular over a decade ago. So most of them have turned to an older relative to teach him how Egypt's famous hexagon-tailed kites are made.
Making a kite is tricky. You must know how to make it balance in the air. It needs to harness the wind without drifting right or left. That's the main concept. The rest is easy. The sticks must be of equal lengths and aligned at equal angles. It's a hobby for us, something that makes us happy, so we share money to build them.
El Emireya's boys were not the only ones to get hooked on kites during the pandemic. Suddenly, Cairo skies were filled with them. It usually costs less than $4 to build a regular kite. The best makers would sell theirs for triple that amount. A micro-business has emerged. While the pandemic has created a slowdown in the economy, this surprising demand on kiting equipment has created a revival in the economy of small producers who used to create these items and have been idle for so many years. Neighborhoods began to join an informal competition on social media. Each would claim to have built the biggest or the most beautiful kite. Some had LED lights, others had razors, and a sort of gangster-styled street battle emerged.
It's become a challenge. Some change the materials to make it stronger. We could challenge one another in a fight. Who breaks the other kite wins. If the kite hooks to yours, you now own it. No one can break this rule, unless it's a young child. We might give it back, but the neighborhood rules don't say so. This is how we're keeping the thrill.
That thrill inspired the Egyptian capital. Artists like Hossein believe that one day there could be an Egyptian kites festival, thanks to COVID-19. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Well, let's now take a short break and return. More news, including your sports news. Let's take a look at a highlight. Top-ranked player JP Britt's eager to return to action as South Africa's squash championship resumes.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Time now for your sport news. Squash is a